Hi, I'm Holly and you're watching Kalkine TV live from Sydney. This is the Economic Corner Show, where we update you on all the biggest global economic announcements. First up on the Economic Corner is an update from the United States. President Joe Biden's Indo-Pacific Policy Coordinator said on Wednesday that the US is looking to convene in an in-person fall summit of leaders in the Quad countries, that is, Australia, India, and Japan, with a focus on infrastructure in the face of the challenge from China. Kurt Campbell said in an online event hosted by Stanford University that other countries were welcome to work with the Quad, which held a first virtual summit in March and pledged to work closely on COVID-19 vaccines. Climate and security. The March Quad Summit was carefully choreographed to counter China's growing influence, and Biden and his fellow leaders pledged to work to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific in the face of challenges from Beijing. They also agreed to hold an in-person summit this year. A White House official said it had yet to be decided where or exactly when the summit would be held. Campbell said there was now a new set of strategic parameters when it came to China, and a period that had been broadly described as engagement has come to an end. Campbell said the operating system the United States had helped build in Asia remained intact, but was under substantial strain in the face of China's rise. Biden, who is pushing for big infrastructure spending at home, said in March that he had suggested to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson that democratic countries should have an infrastructure plan to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative. Belt and Road is a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure scheme launched in 2013 by China's President Xi Jinping, involving projects from East Asia to Europe and seen as a means of significantly expanding Beijing's economic and political influence. And on the other hand, US President Joe Biden has upped the ante on investigation into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, ordering the US intelligence officials to conduct a detailed probe and report back in 90 days. The early investigation has zeroed in on two plausible scenarios for the origins of the pandemic. They are human contact or laboratory accident. The report is due to be submitted within 3 months from now. As of date, among the US intelligence community, two elements think that the virus has spread through human contact, while one element thinks that it spread through a lab leakage. All three have low or moderate confidence in their assumptions. The US president also said that he would press for a fair international investigation of COVID-19 pandemic in China, a country that has been showing tremendous friction to foreigners. And next up, meanwhile, Japan pledged on Thursday to keep in close contact with Olympics stakeholders at home and abroad to ensure a safe and secure games, even as it is prepared to extend a state of emergency across much of the nation, including host city Tokyo. Concerns remain rife about the safety of the 2020 Olympics, postponed for a year due to the coronavirus pandemic, with public opinion polls showing a majority of Japanese are opposed to holding the Games this summer, amid struggles to control a fourth wave of the coronavirus and sluggish vaccine rollout. The government is currently preparing to extend a state of emergency across much of the nation, originally set to be lifted on May 31st, most likely well into June just weeks before the Games are set to open on July 23rd. Earlier this week, the United States advised against travel to Japan, but Olympic organizers have said this will not affect the Games. The White House on Wednesday said it had been assured by the Japanese government that it will keep in close contact about concerns over the Olympics. Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato said Japan would continue making every effort to control the virus, irrespective of the Olympics, and would be in close contact with the concerned parties at home and abroad about the measures being taken in connection with the Games. Just over 5% of Japan has received vaccinations, and it has recorded about 719,000 infections and 12,394 deaths. The Asahi Shimbun, an official partner of the Tokyo Olympics, carried an editorial on Wednesday urging the Games to be cancelled. But a former International Olympic Committee vice president said later in the day the sports extravaganza should and would go ahead in July. In a sign of how uncertain the situation remains, however, Australia's major sports leagues and Olympic hopefuls were left scrambling to make contingency plans after authorities announced a 7-day lockdown in the southern state of Victoria to contain a COVID-19 outbreak in Melbourne. And now, before I share some more big breaking news from Australia, European Union, and North America, it's time for a small break. At Kalkine TV, we'll take you to the heart of the Australian equity market. We'll bring you breakthrough stories that highlight volatility, as well as tailwinds building across the length and breadth of markets. Whether space travel will gain momentum, while economies may gradually open amid vaccine rollouts, our experts will share their timely inputs. So join us on this exciting journey of live streaming, financial and stock market news. Kalkine TV. Hello and welcome back. I'm Holly and you're watching Kalkine TV live from Sydney. This is the Economic Corner. Moving on to an update from Australia. A Reuters poll showed that Australia's central bank will likely hold its cash rate at a record low of 0.1% for a sixth straight meeting next Tuesday, with rates seen at that level through mid-2023, despite a solid economic rebound. All 15 economists surveyed by Reuters this week see no change to policy at the Reserve Bank of Australia's June 1 board meeting. The vast majority of the respondents expect no change to the cash rate until mid-2023. RBA slashed rates last year to an all-time low of 0.1% and launched a massive quantitative easing program to help pull borrowing costs lower as the economy grappled with the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. The economy has since rebounded strongly, but the RBA has pledged not to raise rates until inflation is back within its 2 to 3% medium-term target band. The latest data for the quarter ended March showed a closely watched measure of consumer prices was well under the range at 1.1%. The RBA has said it will decide at its July board meeting whether to expand its quantitative easing program. At the meeting, the board will also consider whether or not to extend its 3-year yield target beyond April 2024. Investors will have their eyes peeled for any sign of hawkishness, given the strength in economic recovery, after New Zealand's central bank resumed publishing its rate track, which signaled rate hikes for next year. Next up is an update on the coronavirus vaccine front. In a new development on the rare blood clot cases linked to the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Scientists in Germany claim to have cracked the cause of the rare blood clots and believe the jabs could be tweaked to stop the reaction happening altogether. Rolf Marschalek, a professor at Goethe University in Frankfurt, who has been leading studies into the rare condition since March, said his research showed the problem sat with the delivery mechanism of the vaccines. Both vaccines used to deliver the genetic instructions for the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 virus into the body. The delivery mechanism means the vaccines send the DNA gene sequences of the spike protein into the cell nucleus, rather than the cytosol fluid found inside the cell, where the virus normally produces proteins. Marschalek and other scientists said in a preprint paper released on Wednesday. In contrast, mRNA-based vaccines such as jabs developed by BioNTech or Pfizer said Moderna delivered the spike's genetic material to the cell fluid and it never enters the nucleus. Marschalek believes there is a straightforward way out if the vaccine developers can modify the gene sequence of the vaccines. J&J had already contracted Marschalek's lab to ask for guidance and was looking at ways to adapt its vaccine. And now, before I share some big breaking news from Australia, the European Union, and North America, it's time for another small break. Stay tuned and do not miss the latest trending news. At Kalkine TV, we'll take you to the heart of the Australian equity market. We'll bring you breakthrough stories that highlight volatility, as well as tailwinds building across the length and breadth of markets. Whether space travel will gain momentum, while economies may gradually open amid vaccine rollouts, our experts will share their timely inputs. So join us on this exciting journey of live streaming, financial and stock market news. Kalkine TV. Hi and welcome back. I'm Holly and you're watching Kalkine TV live from Sydney. This is the Economic Corner show. Meanwhile, the EU has demanded changes potentially amounting to billions of euros from AstraZeneca if the company fails to increase deliveries of its COVID-19 vaccine by next month. European Commission wants the drug maker to pay penalties of 10 euros a dose a day if it does not supply 20 million extra shots by the end of June. The demand is in part of a lawsuit launched by the European Commission in an effort to force AstraZeneca to deliver 90 million doses in the second quarter of the year, rather than the 70 million currently scheduled. AstraZeneca was originally expected to supply up to 300 million doses in the EU in the first 6 months of this year, but that forecast was cut to 100 million after production problems. The Commission wants the court to order the company to raise that figure to 120 million. And now for the updates on economic data announcements. North American transborder freight was up 16% in March of 2021 from March of 2020. Transporter freight between the US and North American countries that in Canada and Mexico were reported with total transporter freight at $114.6 billion of transporter freight moved by all modes of transportation, up 19.5% compared to February of 2020, and up 16% compared to March 2020. Transport freight was up 6.9% compared to $107.2 billion in March 2019. The most used mode were trucks that moved $73 billion of freight, up 24% compared to February. The second most used mode was railways that moved $16.7 billion of freight, up 30% compared to February. Meanwhile, private new capital expenditure and expected expenditure for Australia, which is a quarterly statistic about actual and expected private new capex investment, spend on buildings and equipment by industry, was released. The total new capital expenditure rose by 6.3%. Buildings and structures rose by 3.8%, while equipment, plant and machinery rose by 9.1%, and the estimate for 2021 to 22 is $113,635 million. This is 7.9% higher than the estimate for 2021 to 22. And now, before I share some big breaking news from Australian fashion retailer Mosaic Brands and Australian teenagers leading the action against climate change, it's time for another small break. Stay tuned and do not miss the latest trending news. At Kalkine TV, we'll take you to the heart of the Australian equity market. We'll bring you breakthrough stories that highlight volatility, as well as tailwinds building across the length and breadth of markets. Whether space travel will gain momentum, while economies may gradually open amid vaccine rollouts, our experts will share their timely inputs. So join us on this exciting journey of live streaming, financial and stock market news. Kalkine TV. Hi and welcome back. I'm Holly and you're watching Kalkine TV live from Sydney. This is the Economic Corner. Australian fashion retailer Mosaic Brands has been fined over breaching consumer law in its misleading marketing of face masks and hand sanitizers. The Consumer Watchdog has hit the company with 5 infringement notices over the sales of the COVID-safe products, totaling a hefty $630,000. Mosaic Brands spans more than 1,200 stores across the country and has names like Noni B, Katie's, Rivers, Rockman's under its belt. The ACCC alleges that hand sanitizers advertised as containing 70 pc of alcohol were found to contain only 17 pc. In addition, the company's face masks claim to be CDFTA certified and non-refundable, neither of which were true. Mosaic Brands has since admitted its breach of consumer law and issued an apology. And a climate change class action case from a group of Australian teenagers has seen a historic win. The case against Environment Minister Suzanne Ley and her approval of coal mining projects has led to the Australian Federal Court ruling in favour of the students, who argued that a legal duty of care exists. The group of 8 filed the case on the behalf of all young Australians in September of 2020 and also applied for an injunction to block the minister from approving Whitehaven's extension to its Vickery coal mine in New South Wales. The federal agreed that these projects would exacerbate climate change, thereby causing harm to future generations of Australians. Experts commented that the ruling is a global first of its kind and sets important legal precedents. Well, that is all from the Economic Corner for today. Stay tuned for more latest market news and updates. My colleague Sage will be here shortly with the market close report for today. This is Holly Shields signing off.